Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, thank you for your priceless blessings, for your divine light, divine love, divine power, divine healing, guidance, mercy, help, and protection. Thank you. To our great spiritual teacher, to all the great spiritual teachers, to all the great gods and goddesses, to all the great, great ones, we very, very humbly thank you for your great blessings. We thank you so much. We thank you. We thank you. All right, everybody, let's start. About meditation and service. The teachings, by the way, are given by are a living example of Neem Karoli Baba. We'll remember it like that, okay? Yeah. And most of it are his quotes or his stories. Meditation. Maharaj often spoke about the value of meditation as a spiritual practice, and he himself appeared to be in a meditative state much of the time. Yet he made it difficult for most of us to meditate while in his presence. But when we did, the effects were indeed dramatic. Worldly people go outward, but you must go inward, like the tortoise, withdrawing within your shell. Meditation is good. One can attain a pure mind by one pointedness and detachment. Meditate upon one point, and you will know God. Clear the mind of all worldly things. If you can't control your mind, how will you realize God? By the way, this is applicable for a person who is actually attached to worldly things. May not be applicable to people who have already come out of it, right? For them, what is important is one can attain a pure mind by one pointedness. For example, Maharaji would sometimes say, "What do I know? England is so far off." But sometimes he'd talk of England as if he'd been there. M asked him for a portion of the power that enabled Maharaji to see as far as England and farther. Maharaji laughed and said, "No. Gradually and by practice, you can get that. It is not impossible. Regular sadhana and putting up with any difficulty you come across," which means putting up with any difficulty is more like you build the power of the chakras. Sadhana is you bring spiritual practice and help acclimatize spiritual energy in your chakras. Okay. M started doing puja and meditation as instructed by Maharajji. Maharajji had given him a mantra and told him to start any way he wanted. It didn't matter. After some time, when M and Maharajji were traveling by horse-drawn carriage, M asked Maharajji about the wandering mind during meditation. It won't stand on one point, but many ideas come in. What do I do? Then suddenly a small child ran across a road and the driver pulled the reins to stop the horse just in time to save the child. Maharaji said, like that, pointing to the driver holding the reins. As the mind will travel here and there in all directions, you should always try to pull it to one point. You should center it with continuous practice, then automatically it will go to the one point on which you want to meditate. Ultimately, after years, the mind becomes quiet. So this is true. After years, the mind becomes quiet. Quiet ka matlab it becomes rained, which means the mind doesn't automatically travel at 10 places. It just is in the grip of the soul. You, the soul, grips the mind and doesn't allow the mind to travel wherever it wants to go. So it's something like that. One time he called me into his office in Kanchi and had me sit up on the bed with him. I was under the impression in those days that meditation was something. And here I was with the Guru. It was, I thought, time to meditate, to really tune in. Not with words, but with well known reaction. Maharaj kept breaking down these false concepts of meditation. Each would fall away until finally there was nothing left, and I was just sitting there, feeling nothing transcendental, only emptiness. At that point, as soon as I got it, he jowed me. Jow. Jowed me. And all the time he was talking to you, he was in meditation. You just felt it. Wow. When Maharaji sat with us, we could see that he was in deep state of samadhi. With a nod of his head, he was off to a distant place. Another nod, he was back again. We always felt this way about him that he could be anywhere. This is what we saw. Despite the fact that he totally hid himself, we couldn't help but see it. We were once in the back of the ashram after everyone had been sent away for the day. Sky was very beautiful, red and purple. Maharajji was definitely in a samadhi. It was not a silent one, but it was surely some sort of samadhi. As he leaned way back, he said, "Are there skies like this in America?" And somehow I knew that there would be some connection with the moment when I was back in America. Today I thought of that. Matlab, he was looking. Somehow I knew that there would be some connection with this moment when I was back in America. Today I thought of that. Probably he saw skies like this again, red and purple skies in America, and he remembered what Maharaji would have said long back. On one occasion, KK invited me to join him and his cousin ML in an evening drive out to Kenchi to deliver some lamps and supplies that had been purchased at Maharajji's instructions for a forthcoming holiday ritual. This opportunity was a delight, for never, when Maharajji was present, had I been allowed to be at the temple at Kenchi in the evening after the gates were closed. It was a quiet time of deepening dusk, and all was gentle and silent. Maharajji was sitting alone on his outdoor ducket when we arrived. ML and I joined him while KK went about his business of storing the things we had brought. For once, there was no banter or conversation of any kind. This was what I had really yearned for, the opportunity to meditate in Maharajji's presence. For the constant drama of words and apples that usually surround Maharajji kept all the consciousness focused on the physical plane. Although the yearning to meet him on the other planes was always strong and persistent. When the drama was in progress, I lacked the discipline to ignore it thoroughly and draw my mind within, to focus on the ajna, the third eye, in such a way as to bring consciousness to other planes. Now all was silent. This was the opportunity. I sat in the lotus position and brought my attention to my forehead. Almost immediately, I entered into a deep meditation and felt the physical plane drifting away. At this point, I was vaguely aware that Maharaji had suddenly lain over on his side and was snoring. I recall a vague surprise because from the position he was in, it seemed obvious that he was not really asleep. There was little time to reflect upon this, however, for suddenly my body was shaken by a violent and powerful shocks of energy, which literally made my teeth rattle. The shaking seemed to grow in intensity, and the focus on my forehead faltered as the attention was drawn down to the shaking body. Immediately, Maharaji sat up, turned to ML, and asked, ask Ramdas how much money Steven makes. Oh God. I heard the words from a great distance and also heard ML's reply that he didn't want to disturb me because I was meditating. However, Maharaji insisted and ML gently shook my knee. I could feel great resistance in me to coming down, and I tried to come down with just enough answer 30,000 a year, hoping to be allowed to go back up. But once down, the experience was over. It was, however, enough to show me that my discipline of mind wasn't sufficient to work with the huge energies that Maharaji could release in me with a snore. Shortly afterward, we were jowed. Jowed. Just at the corner of the temple, I looked back. There sat Maharaji in his blanket in the darkness, immobile as a statue. There was something unearthly about him at the moment. It wasn't the Maharaji of warm, intimate moments. It was a remote Shiva who sits atop Mount Kailash in eternal meditation. This was that aspect of Maharaji which, like the Himalayas, seemed vast and impersonal and touched a place of great depth and innocence within me. This was the force that drew me. It was love beyond love. By the way, this is a story of Ramdas, huh? Ramdas. So ML and Ramdas invited by KK, and of course, and you know, beautiful story. This is Ramdas's experience. By the way, there are many known explanations for what happened. I'll quickly brief them to you. The very first explanation is that the soul wasn't, or the system, the bodies weren't capable or ready to handle very large downpour of energy. First explanation, that's by small experience and out. Second was soul didn't had enough karma, but looking at Ramdas's history, it doesn't look like karma was the problem. Third, that the bodies probably weren't enough purified to handle tremendous amount of spiritual energy. The bodies must be very, very purified. And perhaps because of lack of purification, of whatever type of purification, the mild experience was given, and then, okay, enough. So there are many, many more factors also. Sometimes the gurus can just give a glimpse based upon the karma. The remaining karma of expansion has to be earned, by the way. So sometimes it so happens that it's just appropriate amount of experience is given so that you get motivated. For example, some people in pranic healing and then hatha yoga, if you talk to them, you would know that they had remarkable experiences till say they did soul class or after Arhatic and sometime after that also. But soon after that, the experiences stopped completely. There was no experience for years, no experience. And then sometimes it's a probable way to understand that the teacher gives you enough experiences to hook you, but you have to really earn them afterwards. It is the blessing of the teacher that you have experiences, not your own earning per se. But then Master Choksui, for example, in a retreat, in a video that he says that okay, he guides the meditation and all of that. At the end, he says ki, the experience you had right now, it may take you many, many, many years of practice to get to the same level or reproduce say, the same experience. It basically says that your the quality which you should have inside of a system, which should actually be remarkable quality, honestly. Very, very powerful. That takes years to build. Meditation to raise the Kundalini. Meditate to raise the Kundalini. Think about God, it will go right up. Wow, see, this is simple. Meditate to raise the Kundalini. Think about God, it will go right up. To see God, you have to have special eyes, otherwise, you cannot bear the shock. This is exactly why, to all of you who know, there's this a very good example in the Bible. I read that Moses and the burning bush, right? Moses, Egypt, yeah, Moses, yeah. The thing was that Moses couldn't see God. I mean, of course, he saw as in like symbolically saw God. But the burning bush, remember the burning bush story? That Moses saw God in the form of a burning bush. And the bush wasn't actually burning. It was just flame on top of the bush. That's why, as much as I understand. And it was uh, on fire, but as the God stopped speaking, the bush was just as it is, right? Because you couldn't see God, this is the one form of fire that doesn't burn kind of way that you see. Now, my mild understanding is this. Um, the flame that he was speaking about was flame in the head. Bush was in a likeness to what is called as um, small bush, like a what is called as a pineal gland. To those of you who are esoteric practitioners, maybe it's called as a blue pearl. Which is why if you see the sequence of full meditation, Master Yoksai asks you to do this, do this, do this, do this in a very exact sequence that probably resembles the concept of burning bush. There can't be a burning bush outside. There's got to be a burning bush inside, which makes very logical sense, by the way. So just, for your understanding and for your information, this is probably something that you can relate to also. To see God, you have to have special eyes. Otherwise, you cannot bear the shock. When I was a little child, he used to cover my head with his blanket. I used to get some sort of vibration from head to toe. I would shiver. You can call it sensation, but sensation is a cheap word for what I felt. I cannot express that pleasure. One ma was talking about wanting to go to Chitrakoot. Maharaji said, "You want to go to Chitrakoot?" And he grabbed her by the wrist. The next thing she knew, she was in Chitrakoot. Then back at temple again. She was groggy for 8 hours. What is groggy? Acha, weak or dazed or unsettled or unsteady, especially from illness. Have you seen the movie Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, where Harry apparates with Dumbledore to charming village of Burley Babbington or something, God knows what that is. And then he was like almost about to vomit. Remember that story? So probably, something partly similar, teleported. At the Mela, the first time Maharaji put Gurdat Sharma into Samadhi, they had to watch him carefully because he was in so much ecstasy, they were afraid he would fall into fire. Wow. I put my hand on his head when I was bathing him, and my whole body got charged with electricity. On our way to Jagdeshwar, we stopped in Almora, and Maharaji asked me to meditate. I experienced a sensation of flying and thought of Mount Kailash before I lost consciousness. After some time, I returned to normal waking consciousness and we continued on. Later, my wife and others reported having seen Maharajji and me in Delhi at exact time. They wondered why we had left so quickly. Teleportation. During one of his visits to our ashram, Maharajji asked one of his devotees to meditate. The devotee sat down and immediately went into samadhi trance. Maharajji asked the ashramites to look at his eyes and to shake him back to life. They tried without success because he was like a stone. After 10 or 15 minutes, Maharajji turned to the devotee and shouted loudly, "Get up! Get up!" Immediately, the devotee asked the Swami of the ashram, "Do you sit in meditation? Can you sit like that?" Wow, this is good, yeah? That's good. Maharajji's process of teaching concentration and meditation was unique. He'd somehow shake you out of it in the moment. You began to feel some pleasure. I once asked him why he'd shot my samadhi, and he answered that the mind has its limitations, that I was in a physical body, and that these things are achieved slowly, slowly. Otherwise, I'd become a lunatic. See, capacity of the mind. This is what he's trying to say. What I just mentioned a little while back, right? See, capacity of the body, right? So, mind is a man has various bodies: physical body, the etheric body, the emotional body, the mental body, physical body, and the various layers of the mind, right? They're all tied together. So you have to understand that they all have capacities and they have to be slowly, 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 slowly developed. Our spiritual teacher, Master Chogoksoi, very beautifully says that the mind being substituted for the word chakra, he says the capacity of the chakras has to be gradually developed, gradually developed. They have to mature. You cannot give a lot of tasks to of a handling company to say a 10th grader, right? They have to mature up to the point where they've done their masters and they've worked for a few years, and then they can take part of the responsibility and part of the responsibility, and then the whole thing. Not immediately. They can't handle it. There's no point giving it to them, right? Chakras have to mature. The Kundalini also has to mature, by the way, for the system to handle more and more divine energy. You can't have a little awakening and hoping that everything will happen now. ऐसा नहीं होने वाला है. The Kundalini has to stay matured, which means mature up in the system. And that requires a great length of practice, actually speaking. Which is I'm saying, sometimes you're given part of the experience just to give you enough that you feel that yes, you're having something and that hooks you on. Maharaji never allowed meditation on him when I was in his presence, which means Guru meditation on him was not allowed when he was in his presence. Even now, the worst mischief will disrupt my meditation if I try to concentrate on him. But there is no dearth of bliss for me. Wow. Maharaji often foiled our attempts at meditation. Many times when we'd be sitting there, someone would start meditating and Maharaji would send over his Two meditation spoilers. One was the driver, and the other a little boy who was the driver's friend. He would send them over to shake people out of meditation. One time we were all sitting there and he said, "Okay, meditate." And after about a minute, he started telling jokes and making everyone stop. Another time, Maharajji called us into his office and told us to start singing. We started singing, but no one was really into it. So after a while, it died down. And then he yelled from other room, "Keep singing." We picked it up again and it died down again. And he yelled, "Keep singing." We finally, after about 3 hours, the singing caught on and got really great. When it ended, everyone just naturally fell into meditation. And as soon as that happened, we heard from the other rooms, "Take dinner." And we were all ushered into the other room. We were never able to cling to that meditation space for some reason. So there is this Taoist monk I met sometime back in a couple of years back, maybe 2023 or something. 22, 23, I think, sometime 23, I think. And Taoist monk in Bangalore. And he was mentioning about how his great lineage spiritual teachers don't advise a lot of meditation. They advise a lot of service. He says that most people are willing to meditate, but they're not willing to do any kind of service. So their school, or at least their version of school that they had over there, the small monastery in Vannarpet area of Bangalore, they focus a lot more on service, physical active service, and it is the teaching of the great teachers from which this lineage had come. If I'm not wrong, that's how I understood it. So yeah. I valued meditation very highly. So when I found that an essence medita- so I found that an essence meditation teacher was going to spend the summers rainy season in Kausani, a small remote village in the Himalayas. I made elaborate plans to join with three other Westerners for a quiet, intense summer of practice. When I told Maharaji of my plans, all he would say was, if you desire. Then he said, "Go, I'll call you." The house in Kasoni was perfect, and we settled in with great delight. Our summer meditation fantastically seemingly assured. We dug a toilet, took turns fetching water and cooking, gazed blissfully at the Himalayas, and awaited the arrival of our teacher. Anagorika Munindra. It was at the beginning of the second week that we heard a few Westerners had arrived in the village and were staying at a small hotel below. We all agreed that they shouldn't be invited up to our house, for we should protect this space for the work we would commence with Munindra's arrival. But the Westerners continued to arrive in Kausani, and they were not at all pleased to be excluded from the mountain top. After all, Maharaj had told them to come. He said, "Go be with Ramdas in Kausani." That's a beginner's course, not for Ramdas. Oh God. That's a beginner's course, not for Ramdas. I was furious. Maharaj knew we wanted to be alone, yet he had deliberately sent what now amounted to 20 people. We decided to stick to our original plan no matter what, but we had underestimated the extent of Maharaj's Leela. For on Friday of the second week, by the way, you have to understand that normal people also get furious. This is, I want you to really understand. No matter, even if you're very, very close to our hardship or the sainthood, you can get angry. There is uh, I don't know this ever a complete elimination of anger. Uncontrolled anger happens only maybe when you become a great master or something like that. You can have zero anger, but till you're about on the path of even saints get angry. So I just wanted to bring it out very, very clearly that don't have expectations that you will not get angry. That is not how it works. Yeah. He says, "But I was furious, not just angry. I was furious, like fuming furious, you know." But we underestimated the extent of Maharaji's Leela. For on a Friday of the second week, a letter arrived from Munindra. Due to several administrative matters I must take take care of here in Bodh Gaya. I shall be unable to come to Kausani this summer. There went the fantasy. Once we had surrendered the fantasy of a quiet summer of meditation, we joined the other Westerners who had arrived in the village, moved into an ashram across the valley, and had a productive and intense summer ashram experience. We returned to Kenchi at the end of summer at the call from Maharajji. As we came before him for a darshan, he was laughing. He said, Ram Das teacher, Ram Das teacher. Moses teacher never came. Ram Das teacher, Ram Das teacher. And he cackled and pulled my beard. No doubt about it. The events of the summer had not been just a chance misfiring of our plans. There was a there was a paw in the pie. Maharajji had instructed me to be myself and not speak much. He had also told me to focus upon my ajna and think of him. And so one summer when we went in Kausani, who is this person? Oh, again Ramdas, huh? Okay, good. So this is him telling him to meditate, okay? So one summer when we were in Kausani, some 50 miles from Maharajji was, I remained in my room alone, fasting for 5 days. I had many pictures of Maharajji with me. As I was beginning this retreat, I read a story from the Mahabharata about the Pandav brothers, of whom Arjuna was the most skilled. The brothers, so the legend, the brothers, so the legend goes, were jealous of Arjuna's skill and asked their guru why he was so much more proficient. The guru said, "There's nothing so special. It's just that he wants it more than you do." To demonstrate, the guru gave them a task of shooting the eye of a bird with their bow and arrow. Arjuna did the task easily. Afterward, the guru asked each of the brothers what they had seen. One described the tree on which the bird sat. Another described the bird and its coloring. When Arjuna was asked, he said, I see the eye of the bird. I wanted to see Maharajji the way Arjuna saw the eye of that bird. I needed only to make Maharajji my meditative focal point. For focusing on Maharajji would simultaneously focus the eye, the mind, and the heart. After a day or two, the pictures of Maharajji seemed to lose the value, and I put them all away. Yet I felt Maharajji seeming to lose their value. Yet I felt Maharajji's presence in the room. By the fourth day, I felt him so close that it was as if he was standing right behind me. The fasting made me emotionally very sensitive. So when I began to feel that I was no longer behind me and absent from the room, I became very upset. Then I realized that the absence of Maharajji as a separate entity for what had happened in the course of those meditative days was that Maharajji had come closer and closer until he had gone inside of me. I felt alone, not lonely, just alone. It was a feeling of strength and clarity and fullness, but also of aloneness and silence. When even in the presence of sounds, it was a little like being the last person on earth. When I finally emerged from the room and was with people again, the feeling slowly left me. But I now knew that in the path of merging with Maharaji lay my freedom. Kundalini rests below the navel. It can be raised by the Guru's grace, by the gentle, simple touch of the Guru's hand. Wow. When asked why he was surrounded by so many badmash, Maharaji said, only sick people come to a doctor. And like an old and trusted family physician, Maharaji was available day and night for his devotees. And he made house calls, in quotes. Thus, Maharaji's own behavior was a perfect model for that sadhana that he most encouraged in his devotees, selfless, loving service. For the householders who composed the largest percentage of devotees. Maharaji did not generally encourage severe austerities, nor extensive meditation practice, nor complex rituals. Rather, he guided us to karma yoga, a way of coming to God through living life as an act of devoted service. In this way, by the way, doing proper karma yoga purifies the ego, purifies the bodies, purifies the mind, purifies the emotion, because Karma means right thoughts, right speech, right action at all times. Whatever is right, not whatever is beneficial to you, whatever is right at all times, which means you learn to discern, you learn to be emotionally resilient, you learn emotional purification, you learned if it's a physical task, you learn the etheric body becomes much, much cleaner over a period of time. Soul gains stronger, stronger contact with your bodies. In short, the ego gets purified, soul contact becomes stronger, and soul starts to take reign, karma yoga. And most family people don't need meditation, they need karma yoga. They need purification first before they start to accelerate towards proper like soul development and things like that. Most people are not really purified and they want to meditate. That is not a good idea. In this way, Maharaj Ji mirrored the teachings of the greatest devotional literature as in the Ramayana, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bible. But Maharaj Ji made it clear that the hard work alone was not the essence of matter. Rather, it was the work carried on with the remembrance of God. That is, work done with love in the presence of God's grace. ये बहुत ज़रूरी है because I remember in 2000 and 2000 or so, I think. I think it was 2000. Uh, I was in eighth grade maybe. I was in eighth grade approximately. Yeah. Uh, yeah, 2000. Yeah. So we'd gone for shopping in a specific place far away from our house, about 50 kilometers away, in our car. And there was a Gurudwara where we went, and a very beautiful. There were stickers, which we put on the fridge and wherever. A very good sticker said that doing worldly deeds keep in touch with God. Very powerful statement. Doing worldly deeds keep in touch with God. This is exactly what he's also saying. He's saying that rather it was work carried on with remembrance of God, that is, work done with love in the presence of God's grace. That is something which is said in Gurbani, the religious teachings or the religious book of Sikh, also called as the Adi Granth, by the way. But essentially, what is being said is that doing worldly deeds keep in touch with God. That is very remarkable, by the way. Most of us do with concentration, do with awareness. We forget about God and the whole scheme of things. If you can have a gentle awareness, and I will also try it when I'm telling it to you, I'm not just going to bypass it, but it's very important that the awareness is maintained and it's very systematic, by the way. Um, Awareness of God, and you do the task, keep remembering God. What happens in the process is this: as you remember the God, there is something called the spiritual cord, which connects you to your higher soul and the divine spark. That is almost always big, more and more powerful. And as you continue doing the tasks, what happens is that more and more spirituality starts to come inside, and it tends to regulate and control your actions, your speech, your thoughts, your emotions, everything, and makes your bodies, your chakras, your faculties under the control of soul. This is not easy, but this is one of the short ways also of doing it. Buddhist monks practice it in a slightly different manner. They keep remembering the Buddha at the back, or they chant something called Buddho at the back. Buddho at the back of the mind. They keep chanting it, or sometimes they just feel the silence while they're doing the daily task. They're aware of the silence. All exactly the same thing. Then there's no difference. One man worked so hard in the ashram that he almost never had Maharajji's darshan. But late one evening, it so happened that one by one, all the devotees left, and Maharajji was alone on his tucket. The man then went over to sit with Maharajji. Maharajji appeared surprised, since the man would never seem to have the time for darshan. So Maharajji said to him, "What would you like?" The man merely answered, "Atmagyan, knowledge of self." Maharaji replied, service to all is Atmagyan. Hmm, very beautiful. Maharaji would sometimes quote the Gita about purifying the heart. You can get one pointedness through work, the Gita says, and then you get insight. See, you can get one pointedness through work, the Gita says, and then you get insight. Insight is something which is like when soul participates, see, insight is not the work of mind only. Can be, cannot be. It depends upon the quality of insight, by the way. There are grades and grades of insights, by the way. Superficial insights are like more knowledge centric. You know what I'm saying? They're more knowledge based, more knowledge centric, and you can deduce this from this and make a juice, and oh, this is it. But that is not as deep and as profound as transforming. This is good, very, very good. But then there are deeper insights. Deeper insights are those which come as a result of, shall we use the word soul or the higher soul participating with your thinking process. When that tends to happen, when soul starts to take part in your thinking process, in your starts to help you join multiple things to create a completely new insight, those things, my friends, are very, very transforming in nature because you arrived at them. And a real insight mostly is arrived at inside. Anybody can tell something to you, but if it's not ringing the right bell inside of you, it's not really working for you in that way. Which is why, if you hear a good proverb from somebody, like for example, it is giving that we receive. Unless until you truly meditate on it and it becomes a part of your thinking process, not because you accepted it, but because soul has thrown enough light in your mind to make you see the truth in it. Only then will it become your equal insight or equal power of insight. This is something which you will need to really meditate on over a period of time. Serve the poor and remember God. You become one with Christ. Did Maharaj give you any special teachings? To this, Brahmachari Baba smiled sweetly and said, he taught me service. We were all silent for some time after that. Maharaj asked HC how he thought a man succeeded in the world. HC said, by diligent, sincere work. Maharaj countered, saying that God's grace was also necessary. Without God's grace, no amount of hard work will succeed. Wow, this is perfect. Maharaj asked HC how he thought a man succeeded in the world. HC said, by diligent, sincere work. Maharaj countered, saying that God's grace is also necessary. Without God's grace, no amount of hard work will succeed. This is very, very true for all of us also. Um, I have to send this to somebody, and that person will definitely be looking for this. See, this is where when you meet people with problems in life, you have to help them by looking at what can help them, what can't help them. All right, so this is very, very important because I think I was talking to a couple yesterday night, and they were very desperate to find answers for because of job and this and that, and things weren't working, debts were mounting. And I told them very clearly that my spiritual teacher says that you have to start tithing, doing charity. The lady started doing charity. Of course, she got a job which pays about 30,000 or $30,000 higher. She's in the US. The husband is not yet got a job. He's getting very frustrated, very angry, and very, very sad and going into depression. I'm healing the person, but the person is like blaming situation every time, every time, every time, every time, every time. Key situation, bad situation. He's not seeing what God has given to him and criticizing people, criticizing situations. Of course, I'm not saying everything is good in his life. People may be bad around him, or people may be very selfish around him. I understand all that, but you cannot keep criticizing people. That is not how things will look and work, right? In fact, you will manifest more and more of that. So it's so for God's grace to come to you, to earn God's grace also. No, earn ka matlab you don't do anything special, but you have to request for God's grace to come, and you have to be a channel where God's grace can actually manifest. There is no equivalent in any way of God's grace. There is no equivalent. God's grace is something which with a very sincere heart, sincere prayer, and you earn, by the way, God's grace through service. That's my personal understanding. Hard work is important, of course. Hard work is important, but hard work is not the only thing. After a while, anyway, let's go forward. Yeah. Once, I asked Maharaj, how is it possible for a man to remember God all the time? He told me the story of Narad, the celestial sage, and the butcher. Vishnu, one of the aspects of God, was always praising the butcher, and Narad wondered why. Since the butcher was always occupied with which was always occupied, and Narad spent 24 hours a day praising Vishnu. Vishnu gave Narad the task of carrying a bowl of oil full to the brim up to the top of a mountain without spilling a drop. A task completed, Vishnu asked how many times Narad remembered Vishnu. Narad asked how that would be impossible, since he had to concentrate on carrying the bowl and climbing the mountain. Vishnu sent Narad to the butcher, and the butcher said that as he works, he is always remembering God. Maharajji said then, whatever outer work you must do, do it, but train your mind in such a way that in your subconscious mind, you remember God. This is the lesson for me also. I should learn to do this also. It's very important. Maharajji had often instructed me to remain alone, Ramdas, by the way, to have little to do with people and at the same time to serve and feed people. Once I was staying in my room because he had said I should eat alone and not spend time with others. That night, a Western couple had a fight, and later Maharaji looked accusingly at me and he asked him, where was Ramdas? Why wasn't he there to help you? Oh, yeah, helping not just in the form of feeding, right? Serving in all ways. I asked Maharaji about my sadhana, and he said, to serve human beings is the only way for your salvation. You need not do dhyan, meditation. See, to serve human beings is the only way for your salvation. You need not do dhyan or puja, serve all living beings. Wow. Whoever works for God, his work will be done by itself. Work is God, God is worship. Work is worship. The mind should always be engaged in work. Maharajji, how can I know God? Serve people. Maharajji, how can I get enlightened? Feed people. See, if you give them food, no? Physical food, feed people, feed people, feed people. And if you do it with the awareness of God all the time, what gets fed is also spiritual food and not just only physical food, which eventually means that what you get is tremendous amount of spiritual food, something like that. Serve people, feed people. Maharaji opened us to the true joy of service as a way of being with God. It's interesting how critical people get around us because they don't understand why we work so hard, so joyfully. Maharaji allows you the privilege of doing his work. Said one devotee, in quotes, it is an honor to be allowed to serve Maharaji. Photographed by Rameshwar Das. Checkered blankets. About anger and love. Maharaji reacted in a variety of ways to those of us plagued by anger, and all of those ways sooner or later brought the anger to surface and helped us to begin to let go of it. Sometimes a devotee would become the object of a continuous barrage of abuse from Maharaji. The abuse, coupled with underlying love, was a great panacea, or even the most hidden and deep seated anger. For others, it seemed as if situations had just developed around Maharaji. had forced anger to the surface like a badly inflamed boil. And at just the right moment, Maharajji would be there with the necessary word or a glance to release the anger and the necessary cup of milk to soothe their soul after surgery. However, this is exactly what happens, no? You don't always need the presence of a great teacher around you to remove anger and emotions from your system. The teaching has been given to you already by Master Joseph or of your spiritual teacher, whoever the great teacher is, right? You take his blessings, then you start to do what is called inner reflection. You observe the day properly, and you analyze what happened, why happened, what could you have done better. And sometimes, not all, but sometimes you have to start investigating layer by layer. Why are you still being grumpy when you meet this one person in the office? You just remove anger, and grumpiness doesn't really go away because you still feel something. Okay, I feel threatened. Why do you feel threatened? Because he shows off, and I feel insecure that nobody will notice me in my office, for example, or my work will be undermined, or my boss will not be as happy with me because he is too busy outshining everybody else. And he does a good work also, so I'm even more insecure now. Okay, fine. What is the actual reason of your fear? Why does the fear still exist inside of your system? Or you can alternatively take a route. Okay, let's do worst case analysis. What if he really takes your job? Then what? Okay, you'll be out of the job. You'll find some other job. Fine, no problem. That's okay. Uh, should you be acting out of fear? Maybe, maybe not. Should you be making him a friend? Maybe not. These questions have to pass through your mind, by the way. What can you start doing from what you already know? Should you start acquiring newer and newer skills, but not out of fear, but maybe out of wisdom? You have to start thinking a lot in depth and breadth. Every aspect has to be turned over, investigated, turned over. You cannot just become very, very good within the fashion following only a standard procedure. You have to really play hockey in the whole arena. You have to hit the ball everywhere. You have to really, really, the puzzle, the piece puzzles that you make, like a 1,000 piece puzzle. You have to really see every piece and understand where it actually goes. It takes a lot of work. It's not a small thing by any chance. It's exactly like making a 1,000 piece puzzle, 1,000 piece puzzle that you've never seen before. You look at every piece and then you think, look at the big picture. Okay, yes, it's a lot of work, by the way. So I hope you understand. This will require substantial amount of work, and the great teacher being around you makes the work easier because he is doing it directly for you. By the way, but you can do it yourself also to a good degree, of course. For 2 years, Maharaji made Dada do many things as a part of temple management that he avoided at home. And throughout, Maharaji would abuse him to his face and behind his back, from morning until evening. In the course of his training, Dada learned to control his anger. After 2 years, Maharaji asked Dada's wife if he got angry anymore, and she replied only very rarely. Maharaji told Dada that if he were Dada's wife, he would have thrown Dada out a long time ago. Maharaji turned to Dada and said, "You're a fool." Dada agreed. Then Maharaji said, "You're not a fool." Dada agreed. How cool, man. That Dada had become quite philosophical about Maharaji's abuse of him is evident from a conversation between them. So there was a constant sound of gunfire nearby, and Maharaji asked, "What is that?" Dada said, "They're firing blanks, Baba." "What do you mean blanks?" Maharaji asked. "That's what you do, Maharaji." Dada answered, "They're firing blanks." "Oh, I also go on firing blanks," he said delightedly. Now, this is a very, very good example. There's no real bullets inside of it, just plain gunpowder, and there's nothing, right? Blank. Very interesting example. A good friend of mine, long, long time back, I certainly don't remember his name right now. Bharat. He was a student of Sri Ravi Shankar from Art of Living. And I was actually working at the time for a client whose entire, everybody in their office was out of living practitioner. I was the only one who was a planet killer. This was, I think, 2016, 17 or something around that time for a client of mine. Everyone was out of living from the bottommost developer to the topmost guy out of living. And we were talking for some time, and he invited me to his house to heal his father. I said, okay, I'll come, no problem. And he very beautifully said that there is, what did he say? That my Guruji or his teacher says that one should try to, even if you have to get angry, it should be like an empty shell. There should be nothing there should be no real anger in the words. Words can appear in whatever you want them to appear, but in terms they should be empty of the emotion, completely empty. And I really learned something amazing on that day. Of course, it's taking me a very long time to get there. But he says that the great teacher says this. And I was like, oh, that's very, very, very beautiful when I first heard. Even up until now, it's like you should only throw wrappers, but not brick inside of it, right? Just wrappers is fine. Just papers is fine, not the brick. Paper doesn't actually hurt. It has the illusion to bring stuff out, but not cause more trauma. Putting bricks inside of it and throwing is real damage. Dada is a master of arts, said Maharajji. Dada replied, and you're a master of abuse. Only if Maharajji was so bad, he made the Maas cry. When Maharajji was so bad that he made the Maas cry, he said to them, only if you're strong enough to hear my abuses can you face the world. Wow, that's good. The person who is close to me can be scolded. Oh, that also reminds me. Our spiritual teacher, Master Chokoksoi, he would also scold his close with disciples a lot to keep them in check, to keep them in line. A lot, by the way. Or whenever they did anything, he would tell them a few good things about them, and then he would go about scolding them. Correcting them, more important than the word scolding is not actually applicable. Correcting them. And he would, it was duty also, right? As a great teacher. So I'm sure most spiritual teachers do something like this. A saint never gets angry. I could not get angry with you, even in a dream, which means no real anger. Yeah, that's very important. No real anger. One day, when we Westerners had been sent to the rear of the temple grounds, as was the usual during the day, I decided for sentimental reasons to go upstairs from the building I had lived in 1967 and sit in my old room. One of the windows of this room looked over the wall to the front part of the temple, which was otherwise not visible from the back. As I idly looked for one of these windows, my attention was caught by a sight that transfixed me at the window but also made me stand well back, so that I could not be observed from outside. Down below at the window of Maharaji's room, a devotee who worked in the temple and served often as our translator was crying profusely. He was obviously talking to Maharaji. Then he got up and walked back towards the rear of the temple, still in tears. When he was gone from the view, Maharaji appeared in the doorway and came out into the courtyard. He stood looking like a mad lion or elephant, and though I could not hear him, it was obvious that he was yelling and turning this way and that with great fury. Everyone in the front courtyard seems to be cowering. It didn't seem dharmic to me. Maharaji had, after all, specifically said to me that a saint never gets angry. Feelings of betrayal rushed through me, for there was Maharaji, obviously, in a rage. So he wasn't a saint either. What kind of a guru was this? He said one thing and did another. I myself now became enraged and felt for the first time since 1967 my heart turning cold towards Maharaji, and the thought came to me apparently that I'd have to leave Maharaji and go it alone. I stumbled back downstairs, deeply disappointed, and sat with others, but said nothing. Later, I learned that right after that scene that I had witnessed, Maharaji apparently walked back into his room, called Dada, and in a very conversational tone asked, did Ramdas see me angry? Dada said he didn't think so, but Maharaji insisted that I had sent him back with a message. When Dada found me sitting sullenly, he asked, Maharaji wants to know if you saw him angry. Yes, I said. Well, he said to tell you that if you have any questions, they will all be answered later. And he left. Few moments later, the crying devotee appeared, bag in hand, to tell us that he had been banished from the temple, supposedly, as we learned, for letting 40 pounds of potatoes go bad in storeroom. Wow, 40 pounds is good amount. He said tearful goodbyes and left. Now, this fellow was not particularly competent, and though he was sweet, he was rather a nuisance. Normally, I would have been unhappy to see him go, for he was constantly trying to ingratiate himself with the Westerners. Under these circumstances, however, I suddenly felt compelled to support the underdog. I got up and followed him out to the front of the temple. Just going out to the front unbidden was already an act of insurrection. And as this crestfallen fellow was leaving the temple gate, I purposely went up to him, embraced him, and gave him some money and note with my address in Delhi if he needed anything. Then, as he left, I walked defiantly back to the temple like a showdown scene from the movie High Noon. Everyone realized that I had sided against Maharaji. All day I waited, but no clarification was forthcoming. As usual, we were not called to the front of the temple until a few minutes before the departure of the last bus. At the time, one of the couples was having some marital difficulties, and Maharaji spoke directly to them. He said they must see God in each other and give up their anger. I sneered inside, remembering the scene I had just witnessed. Then he paraphrased the words of Kabir, in quotes, do what you do with another person, but never put him out of your heart. As he spoke, he looked directly and forcefully at me. The words burned into my heart, and I heard them in a moment as applying to the married couple, to Maharaji's behavior by the devotee, and to my own reactions at the scene I had witnessed. Once again, I had got caught in the melodrama and had forgotten to remember the illusions and behind it the love. He never said anything else about this incident, which made what he did say all the more powerful. Wow. We'll pause exactly right here. In 274, I think we read about 15 pages, if I'm not wrong. So 274 divided by 436. We read about 62% of the book, which is good. That's your closing prayer, everybody. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, thank you for your great blessings. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. To our great spiritual teacher, to all the great spiritual teachers, to all the great gods and goddesses, to all the great, great ones, we incredibly humbly thank you for your great blessings. We thank you so much. Thank you. Atma Namaste, everyone. Take care, and we will see you, some of you at least, in the afternoon study. Take care. Bye bye. God bless everyone.